We are very clear that we're an anti-racist organisation. Too many women have lost their lives giving birth to children. There have been too many stillborn births. I remember going to school sort of age 6, 7, 8, 9 and being kicked, punched, spat at. The healthcare environment is very hierarchical, and we need to ensure that nurses and midwives get the right support to enable them to become leaders. I want to prove those people wrong. Those people who, when I was 11, 12, 13, 14, were saying you'll never make it in life, the best thing you can hope to be is a bus driver. In this current climate where unfortunately there are increased community tensions, there's a greater level of hate in society, we want to make sure that if you're a nursing or midwifery professional, you won't be referred to our fitness to practice process just because of your background or your identity. When you look at higher education institutions, we want to make sure that the treatment of people who may be black, Asian, minority ethnic, may be Jewish, Muslim, that they are treated fairly. So the nursing and midwifery professions, are the backbone of the NHS, the backbone of healthcare services. They need a strong and effective and independent regulator, which is what we're building at the NMC.
Welcome to this episode of Voices of Care. My guest today is Paul Rees MBE, the Chief Executive of the Nursing and Midwifery Council. Paul, thank you so much for taking time out of your really busy day to join us on Voices of Care.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise, it's an extraordinary time for healthcare, and you've obviously been in post since January, and there's been the 10-year plan. So just wanted to get your view on this transformative time across healthcare. It's definitely top of the agenda politically in terms of news coverage.
It is, as I think it always is, because the health of the nation is so important. I think the 10-year plan is really exciting, but we have to remember, of course, that the NHS exists across 4 nations, although, of course, in essence, you've almost got 4 different systems under one NHS banner. So the 10-year plan obviously talks to the English equation, and I think it's encouraging from my perspective that it talks about nursing and midwifery and talks about the importance to reduce the attrition of nursing and midwifery students, the importance of ensuring that nursing and midwifery professionals are better supported throughout their careers, that in neighbourhoods there'll be nursing and midwifery leaders, there'll be a nursing strategy led by the Chief Nursing Officer, which will include midwifery as well. So I think that's really exciting. I think obviously there are lots of challenges in that patients are changing, if you like, in their nature, in that we come in all shapes and sizes these days, and there's a diversity which there wasn't before in many cases. There are challenges, obviously different health challenges. We've seen a mental health crisis over recent years since the pandemic. So there are lots of challenges. And then, of course, there are the funding issues, which are very pressing in many ways across all 4 nations. And I think you often find that although you've got 4 systems under one NHS banner, the challenges felt across each of the 4 countries is very similar.
No, I agree, and you're right. I think the opportunities for nursing and midwifery are going to be very powerful. It would be interesting to hear what Duncan Burton will be saying about that. And the workforce plan, of course, is coming out next year. Just very briefly, you talked about the news. We're in November. We've had a slew of reports relating to maternity, of course, some investigations at various hospitals. Baroness Amos is leading a review. So obviously something that you're keeping a close eye on.
Yes, so there's the national investigation led by Baroness Amos. There's the Sally Holland review in Wales. There's the Leeds maternity review. There's a Nottingham review being led by Donna Rockenden. And I know that people will be looking at maternity care in Scotland and in Northern Ireland. So it is a tough time. Too many women have lost their lives giving birth to children. There have been too many stillborn births. So it's really important that we get to the root cause of the challenge. And so as an NMC, we regulate nurses, we regulate midwives. And so it's important that we work really closely with the reviews, with the inquiries. And also we work with families have been affected by these situations. And it's important that we ensure that our processes are as easy to use as possible, and that we reach out to families. So we've been doing work with some of the families in Nottingham, holding surgeries in Nottingham, and saying and openly that we haven't been reaching out to them as much as we should have done. Often regulators sort of have their processes, and I think if you're someone bereaved, the regulator can feel quite remote. So I think all regulators have got more to do to make their processes more accessible and ensure the language they use is plain English, which isn't always the case.
No, absolutely, and we'll keep a watching brief on that. And I think one of the things I've been struck by since your appointment in January is the candour from the NMC, if I may say so. You came in at what I think we might call a transformative, challenging time. I think your annual report says, candidly, 24-25 was a difficult year. So that background was what informed you, and in a sense also attracted you to the challenge.
Yes, well, I do like a challenge, and I've led on culture and performance transformation.
Pharmacy.
Yes, so at the Royal College of Psychiatrists, where I was chief executive for 7 years, I led on culture and performance transformation, and I think many people viewed the Royal College of Psychiatrists at that time as being the highest performing medical Royal College. I know it's still doing lots of excellent things under the brilliant new chief executive Sonia Walter and the president Lade Smith, and I was then chief executive at the National Pharmacy Association. And again, helped to transform culture and performance there. At the Royal College of Psychiatrists, we really helped put mental health centre stage and ensured that funding for mental health increased. And that was, me working with lots of great colleagues, a number of presidents, a number of senior officers and senior staff. We put a values-based approach and equality, diversity and inclusion at the heart of how we did things. We won lots of awards for the way that we had an inclusive workplace. We had the lowest gender pay gap, lowest ethnicity pay gap in the medical Royal Colleges. And I don't know if you ever look at Glassdoor, but
Of course.
the Glassdoor website had ratings for us which were the best of any medical Royal College and one of the best of any charities in the UK, because we worked so hard to try to create an inclusive, positive and empowering culture. And at the National Pharmacy Association, while I was there, we led a campaign called Save Our Pharmacies. And you may remember last year there were lots of media stories about highlighting the fact so many community pharmacies are closing. There's been a massive contraction in community pharmacies over the last decade, calling for a fair funding deal for community pharmacies. And that campaign led to a deal earlier this year, which saw a 19% uplift for community pharmacies in England. So they were the two previous jobs that I had done, and I knew there were challenges at the NMC, and I was very keen to come along and try and help the NMC transform its culture and its performance.
And I think I'm right in saying that you were awarded an MBE for your contribution to mental health and equality, diversity and inclusion for your work at the Royal College of Psychiatry. So well equipped here. The NMC clearly was going through a challenging period. It had been subject to an investigation. So I think the big work, I think you're now saying that you are turning it around. Perhaps you can paint that picture for us, because you've issued a new strategy, 25-27, with quality and equity at its heart.
Yes, so when I joined the NMC, it was about 6 months or so after the independent culture review, which had been really clear about the problems the organisation faced with bullying, harassment and racism. And so I held meetings with members of our staff team. We've got 4 sites, 3 in London, 1 in Scotland. I spoke to the staff team. We've got about 1,400 staff.
I think 770 people turned up.
That's
in
right.
that.
Yes, so it was a big turnout.
A big listening exercise.
Yes, yeah, and it was great because I was able to say, this is what I've done at previous organisations. I want to help lead a similar process at the NMC. What are your concerns about the NMC? How do you think things could be done better? What do you think the challenges are? And interestingly, what people said to me pretty much echoed what was in the independent culture review. So using that information, we pulled together a culture transformation plan, which we published in March. So around about 8 weeks after I'd started, I was determined to move at pace. And that addresses a number of key issues that were highlighted through those town hall events, but also the independent culture review. So ensuring that we have a strong and effective leadership,
Yeah.
values-based decision making, we embed equality, diversity and inclusion, or equality, equity, diversity and inclusion, embed psychological safety, promote enduring work and ensure regulatory fairness. And as part of that plan, we've been rolling out one of the biggest coaching programs for managers in any healthcare regulator ever, as far as we know. So all of our managers are being coached on issues such as embedding EDI, creating psychological safety, promoting enjoyment at work, to help turn the organisation around, because it can't just be the job of the chief executive, it can't just be the job of the senior leadership team or the council. It's the role of every leader at the organisation, so that's all managers as well as members of the council, to help turn the organisation around.
And let's put that into context, because that's a fabulous piece of work. You're obviously someone who doesn't like standing still for too long. Why is this so important? I'm just looking at the context. We've had the Royal College of Nursing issued a report weeks ago highlighting that there was a 55% increase of calls to their helpline from their members over the last 3 years who had suffered racial abuse. We've had a chief nursing officer in Medway now return to post and receive an apology for raising an issue around racism, of course. So put that into context. This is now an issue that it's actually an imperative, not just for the NMC, but it seems to be part of a wider societal shift, which is impacting the way patients and providers treat their staff, including, of course, nursing professionals.
Yes, well, I'm a great believer that if you try to ensure fairness for everyone, then everyone gets a fairer deal. And within nursing and midwifery, a third of all nurses and midwives are Black, Asian and minority ethnic. And within the NMC, around about 43% of staff are Black, Asian and minority ethnic. If you ensure fairness for those people, you'll put in proper processes and proper support for everyone, meaning you have better processes for all staff at the NMC and for all nursing and midwifery professionals. We want a fair deal for everyone. You can only do that if you're ensuring that you've got a strong equality and equity, diversity and inclusion agenda. So that's what we're doing at the NMC, but also it's about creating the right culture. I think it's become clear to me through the roles I've had that if you create a positive, empowering and inclusive culture, then the staff team, whichever organisation you're at, will feel that they belong to the organisation. They will feel that they are more motivated. They'll feel more happy to work, the extra hours, to go the extra mile to get things done. And then if you're following that same approach, the services you provide will be fairer and more inclusive, which means the end sort of user gets a fairer deal. Now, we know that at the NMC, some members of staff have been bullied, often because of the colour of their skin. We know that in terms of nursing and midwifery, a third of all nurses and midwives are Black, Asian, minority ethnic. We know that, unfortunately, in this current climate where unfortunately there are increased community tensions, there's a greater level of hate in society. We know that nurses who are Black, Asian and minority ethnic are receiving more racist insults, if you like, at work, just suffering more racial prejudice than possibly has been the case for many a year. In fact, I addressed a conference of Carolan nurses, or nurses of Carolan heritage, and they were saying that they feel less secure and more at risk as nurses in the UK than they have done at any time in the last 30 years. So if you want to ensure that you can deliver great services and ensure that everyone is treated well, you've got to put EDI in place and ensure a positive, empowering and inclusive culture.
And part of that, of course, is the language, and you're a communications expert. And one of the steps I noticed that you have taken as an MC, you've said you've obviously changed your boards, strengthened the board, but also you took the decision to adopt the anti-racist charter, I think, from Unison. So tell us how important it is to be, as your goal is to be an anti-racist organisation.
Yes. So I think, again, if you're going to be an organisation that does the right thing, that ensures fairness, you've got to make sure you've got the right support in place for the people who traditionally are most marginalised. And so that means you do have to be an anti-racist organisation. Certainly that's what we feel. So we've signed up to the Unison Anti-Racism Charter. Another issue, I should say, at this current time is there's been a huge spike in anti-Semitism. So we've been doing a lot of work on anti-Semitism because a lot of clinicians who are Jewish and a lot of patients who are Jewish have faced hostility since October 2023. There's also the issue of increasing anti-Muslim hate. So, you have to put the right building blocks in place to make sure you guard against those things. But yes, we are very clear that we're an anti-racist organisation. We want to make sure that if you're a nursing or midwifery professional, you won't be referred to our fitness to practice process just because of your background or your identity. We want to make sure that inequities based on gender or ethnicity are eliminated in our fitness to practice process. We want to make sure that referrals that come in from employer bodies are fair and that there aren't disparities based on ethnicity. And when you look at higher education institutions, we want to make sure that the treatment of people who may be Black, Asian, minority ethnic, may be Jewish, Muslim, that they are treated fairly. And so differential treatment is eliminated from those programs at higher education institutions.
And that's really important because one of the goals, of course, as the regulator is to ensure that there is trust from the general public and make sure registrants, of course, are compliant. I think 1 in 5 are internationally qualified on the register. And fitness to practice, I think, was identified as a key area in that investigation. I think one of the things you've striven to make that process is more compassionate for the individuals that are referred, because it's a tremendously emotional journey if you're referred to a fitness to practice process.
Yes. Our role is to make sure that if someone isn't fit to practice, they are not on the register. And so we therefore do have to have a fitness to practice process. And in fact, that's defined in the sort of rules set out for us in Parliament. But having said that we do have to do this, it is incredibly stressful for someone who's referred. And many cases are closed at screening, which is the first stage within the fitness to practice process. In fact, the majority of cases are closed at screening, which actually means the majority of cases coming into the NMC are not for the NMC. So we should only be looking at cases where there is a genuine risk that the person in question is not fit to practice. Some of the cases that are referred to us don't meet that acid test.
And you change the emphasis of the guidance from seriousness of the case to risk for that very reason, because
Yes.
it's about protection.
Absolutely. So it's about protection, and it's about the question of, is there a risk that the registrant or the nursing or midwifery professional referred is not fit to practice? That's the only type of case we should be looking at. One of the issues that all regulators are facing is the number of referrals being made in is growing exponentially. So in April 2024, when we launched our fitness to practice improvement plan, we had an average of about 450 referrals being made a month, and that was from members of the public, employer bodies, other nursing and midwifery professionals. 2 years later, a year and a half later, that's gone up to almost 650 referrals. And that's being replicated across all regulators. So we have to take every case referred into us seriously, because there could be a risk the person's not fit to practice. There could be something that is extremely serious that we should be looking at. But in the majority of cases, they won't be the right referral for the NMC. So it's important that we make our process as timely as possible. Unfortunately, a number of people are in our processes for 2 or 3 years. We don't want that. We want to be completing cases, ideally within 15 months. So in the summer of 2023, 60.8% of cases were dealt with within 15 months. Now, just over 2 years on, it's roughly between 71 and 72% of cases being dealt with within 15 months. So we're turning cases around much more quickly, but there are still too many people stuck in the process for 2 or 3 years. And it's not just bad news for the nursing or midwifery professional, it's also bad news for the person who's made the referral. They want an outcome quickly. They don't want to be waiting 2 or 3 years to find out the answer. So we do need to make sure that we get that process even more timely than it is now.
Yeah, and that's a remarkable jump from 60.8% within 15 months to 70. I think the other thing that the investigation showed was as you mentioned, the disproportionate nature of referrals from people from minority backgrounds. And I think one of the things that addresses that, if I'm right in saying, you've also increased significantly the representation of both lay and registrants in the panels that decide these cases.
Yes, so we did a major recruitment program, and it's just under a quarter of all panel members are Black, Asian, or minority ethnic, which is excellent. We actually would like to go even further because a third of nursing and midwifery professionals are Black, Asian, minority ethnic, but that was a massive increase. We've pledged, as I say, to try to eliminate disparities based on ethnicity and gender, because men they have to jump higher hurdles within the
Right.
FTP process than women, and that was validated by another report that came out in, I think it was early summer, called "Ambitious for Change," which was research done by the University of Greenwich, and it showed that although the outcomes were equal, if you like, and fair within NC processes for Black, Asian, minority ethnic nursing and midwifery professionals and for male professionals, during the process, they had to leap higher hurdles, right? And they had to go further to prove what they were saying was right. So that's iniquitous, and we need to address that. So, having pledged to remove disparities from the FGP process, we have a sizable culture change and EDI team, and we have a fantastic person who's been brought in, a former barrister who's leading on a piece of work to say, now we've said we're going to eliminate unequal to the treatment, what actual steps are we going to take in order to bring that about? So there's a working group within the NMC. We'll be identifying a number of measures, and then what we'll do is we'll meet with a number of senior nursing and midwifery professionals with lived experience to test out those measures. Obviously, they might suggest different measures or changing the measures we've put forward, and then we hope to start rolling those out early in 2026, and then we hope that will then start to reduce disparities within fitness to practice.
It's a great aspiration and a big change from 24 when the report was done. And important actually that you highlighted that with the male nurses now contributing, I think, about 11% around that for the register. I wanted to step back a little bit because your passion for EDI, embedding EDI, taking on tremendous challenges is clear from your history. And I just wanted to find out what motivates you. You talked earlier around society and the growing incidence of hate. I'm old enough to remember a band called The Specials. They sang a song, so it doesn't make it all right, referring to different people's racial backgrounds. You don't have to hate, you don't have to fight. Where does your passion come from? Because it goes back all to your journalistic days highlighting racism in football, I think, for The Telegraph.
Well, it's really interesting that you mentioned The Specials, because as a child, growing up in a white suburb in northwest London, where lots of the kids going to school came from quite run-down estates, and a lot of the kids would have been supporters of the National Front or the British National Party. I remember going to school sort of age 6, 7, 8, 9, and being kicked, punched, spat at by some of those children. And then when I went to secondary school, I was punched, kicked, spat at, but also sometimes racist kids would come in with knives to try to attack me. And the music I listened to at home to give me solace was The Specials. So I listened to that very album, I don't know how many times, thousands of times, and I remember playing the song "It Doesn't Make It All Right," and that album was on constant play. It was actually an LP that was secondhand, because when I was about 9 or 10, someone gave it to me secondhand. I think they'd been given a second copy of it, so they knew I liked The Special, so they gave it to me. So I played those songs all of the time, and I think having seen that, witnessed it with my own eyes, I developed a very strong sort of commitment to standing up to unfairness, standing up to bullying, standing up to bigotry. And as it happened, our next door neighbours when I grew up were two people who, Mr. and Mrs. Sontag, who were Jewish, who'd escaped the Holocaust. And they were really lovely people. And, they used to invite me around for cups of tea and give me biscuits and cakes and whatever. And, I remember being told that they'd come here to, escape sort of Nazi Germany, and they'd had to come here in order not to be sent to, camps and be killed. And I remember, as a young child, thinking that was absolutely incredible that anyone would want to harm such lovely people. So I think it was that, and my grandfather was someone who was a political activist, believed in social justice, and
Trade union leader, I think.
that's right. Yeah, well, he was a leader of a tiny political party called the Socialist Party of Great Britain, and he was a union activist with the union which was called NALGO, which became part of Unison. He taught me, and he was white. You know, I'm mixed race, so my father is black, my mother's white, and he was white, and he was very dedicated to social justice. And he would sort of tell me that different marginalised people tend to be blamed whenever there's an economic downturn. They're the scapegoats. People who are Asian, people who are black, Jewish people who are gay, etc., etc. And so that definitely informed my worldview.
We could press play on his words today, it seems. They seem to resonate. And one final thing from that period, because I think it's really interesting. I think you're on record as saying, obviously, racism can break you, it can make you stronger, it can kill you in some cases, George Floyd, etc. But it can also stay with you because of the fact that it actually attacks your very essence. I think you had teachers telling you that what your aspiration should be to be a bus driver. I've got nothing against bus drivers. My late father-in-law was a bus driver. My father did the trains on the Underground. But I guess one of the motivations might be to prove one or two people wrong.
Absolutely. So when I was at school, some of the teachers would talk about your lot have done this, your lot have done that, based on news articles, and they were clear that if you were black, the best you could hope to be was a bus driver. You shouldn't be thinking about a professional career. So I obviously have worked long hours throughout my career, and I was the first black chief executive of a medical Royal College. I was the first black chief executive of a national community pharmacy organisation. I'm the first black chief executive, as far as I know, of a healthcare regulator. And obviously, I've had to work, very long hours throughout my career, which has sometimes driven my wife around the bend. But happily, she's continued to be very supportive. And we've talked about it quite a lot. Why am I so driven? And it's because I want to prove those people wrong. Those people who, when I was, 11, 12, 13, 14, were saying, you'll never, make it in life. You're the best thing you can hope to be is a bus driver. So when you get a letter in the post when you're being offered a national honour. And I got the letter, and one of the first things I thought about was those teachers and those kids who'd attacked me, racially, abused me, tried to kill me in some cases, in terms of some of the kids, and thought about them. And I thought, that's one of the main reasons I'm really keen to accept this award, because, or this honour, because they wouldn't be able to believe that someone of my background would be able to go on and achieve that.
Well, I think the past helps to inform the present and the future, and I'm sure your maternal grandfather would be extraordinarily proud of what you've done. Looking ahead, if we can, just to the final section of the podcast, there's so many things we could talk about, but I'm really interested in the vision you've got in your strategy around the changes. Now, there's a complete transformation in the healthcare landscape, the shifts in the 10-year plan. Nursing is becoming ever more complex. There's obviously 35,000 nurses in social care, which we need to recognise. But there's a lot of plans that you have to recognise advanced practitioners, advanced nurses, because that is a very distinct element where actually competence, complexity, and the change that's taking place is going to really be played out.
So the nursing and midwifery professions, are the backbone of the NHS, the backbone of healthcare services. We have 853,000 people on our register. That's 1% of the UK population, 2% of the UK's working population. So this is a really large and important body of people, and for them to be able to do their job to the best of their ability, they need a strong and effective and independent regulator, which is what we're building at the NMC. And we are clear we need to address a number of issues. So the first one is practice learning. What should nursing and midwifery students learn when they're being educated? And so we're producing a sort of a review of that, and with recommendations for the future in the autumn of next year.
Yep.
That's going to be really important because the environment within which they're working is changing hugely. You've got AI. You've got the challenge of social media. That's not necessarily in the workplace, but people use social media, and obviously our code, looks to people to uphold the values of the code in work and out of work. You've got the shift from hospitals to community settings. You've got a whole host of changes. The populace is changing. The patient groups or patient population is changing. People are becoming sort of more diverse in so many ways. The whole landscape is changing. So we need to make sure that the education for nursing and midwifery students is right. So we're producing that next year. We also need to modernise our code, which is our code of conduct for nursing and midwifery, and also the revalidation process to again make sure it's fit for the current era. So much is changing.
So
the
people
world
stay
is
up to date.
changing. Absolutely. And then advanced practice. So there've been advanced practitioners in nursing and midwifery for years.
Yeah.
We haven't ever produced standards for advanced practitioners, which means people who are working as advanced practitioners are working to different job descriptions with different concepts in mind.
Variation,
A huge variation across the 4 countries. So we need to produce clear standards. So we produced principles for advanced practice, just a few months ago. We're going to produce the standards for advanced practice by March 2028. And that's all part of us making sure that we are equipping nurses and midwives to be the best versions of themselves in this ever-changing environment that they're working in.
And one final question, because we're looking ahead and we'd love you to come back and give us an update on all of these things.
I'd love to do that.
Because it's a huge transformation that's taking place. We're waiting for the workforce plan. That's been delayed, of course, until the spring of 2026. It's going to be a very important document, massively impacting the 376,000, I think, nursing practitioners working in the NHS alone. Whoever leads organisations in the future, it has in the 10-year plan been said that there may be less staff than was anticipated in the previous workforce plan, but they're going to be, it says, better trained and a better environment. I want to talk about leadership, something very close to your heart. Nurse leadership is critical for this transformation. We've had the messenger review, we've had the vision of the NHS plan. How important will it be for nurses to take leadership roles, and what's the NMC's commitment to support those leaders, because they come from many diverse backgrounds?
I think leadership is absolutely key. An organisation or a group of staff will stand or fall often by the strength of the leadership. So leadership is absolutely key, and I think that's what we need to support as an organisation through all the work we're doing in terms of upstream regulation, in terms of setting out the parameters of what good leadership looks like, because there are lots of leaders in the NHS who come from nursing and midwifery backgrounds, and we need to make sure that they have the grounding necessary through education. They're working to really clearly defined standards, both as general standards of proficiency, but also standards of proficiency for advanced practitioners, which is going to help get them into the right place to then go and apply successfully for leadership roles. It's really important. We all know that healthcare is a very hierarchical place. I was a director with the Royal College of GPs, chief executive of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, chief executive of the National Pharmacy Association, now working with nurses and midwives. The healthcare environment is very hierarchical, and we need to ensure that nurses and midwives get the right support to enable them to become leaders. Because historically, looking back over the decades, the system may have made certain assumptions about who would be leaders, who wouldn't be leaders. We need to make sure that nurses and midwives are equipped to be the best leaders they can be, because certainly if you look across the NHS and wider healthcare settings now, many nurses and midwives play really important leadership roles, and it's important that that is enhanced and continues on an upward trajectory over the coming years.
And one very final question: the strategy you've published, 25 to 27, is very much confessed to be an interim one, and in 28 you're going to look ahead. I know we're looking a bit crystal ball, but technology is going to play a really big role, and I think you've made that a central pillar of what you're going to be looking at ahead, to make sure that NMC has its systems, but also that the registrants are able to actually get the training they need to take advantage of AI and all the genomics, all the different things that are envisaged in the 10-year plan.
Absolutely. So these things are, being used today. We need to make sure that our standards and that the education that nursing and midwifery students get equips them for the modern world, not for a world of 10 years ago. Things are changing really fast, so we need to make sure that our standards and everything we wrap around the nursing and midwifery professions is fit for purpose for the modern era. And we need to be looking forward and making sure that we are in the right place and not several steps behind.
Well, on that forward-looking note, Paul Rees, thank you so much for joining us today and to speaking so much from your heart. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise. If you've enjoyed this episode of Voices of Care, please like, follow, or subscribe wherever you receive your podcasts. And if you want to learn more about how we're turning the dial on the health and social care debate, please visit the website at the bottom of the page. In the meantime, I'm Suhail Mirza. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. I think that's what we call a wrap.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.